try to make this interactive for you guys who are on the video. And for those of you who are watching from YouTube, please write in the chat whenever you have a question, or if there's something that doesn't sound right or you're not sure. You can always send something in the chat there. Um, so, going off and getting started here for the day. Since we've been playing a lot more this week, some of you maybe have been increasing your practice because you're starting to do warm up, so you might be feeling pretty good. And you might feel like, oh, okay, well now I can really play because I feel so good. And you might overdo it sometimes. And probably I'm just speaking from my own experience, but I've been feeling pretty good after doing these warm up sessions, and I practiced maybe a little too much yesterday. So something that I like to do to kind of get started, because I can feel it like in here that it's a little bit tight, I like to do a little bit of some stretches with the lips. And they're pretty simple. These are some exercises that I learned from actually it was a TED Talk from a friend of mine who is in youth orchestra with me named Annie Bosler. And she is absolutely incredible. You can definitely check out this TED Talk. And she's talking about a student of hers who is coming back from an injury where she got kicked by a horse. And her, I guess she got kicked in the face, so her lips were injured pretty badly. But she actually came back. She loved playing the French horn, and she found a way back, and Annie helped her sort of rebuild her face. And so in that, she's actually talking about a few exercises that I think are really, really useful, especially for just getting started for the day, especially if you're feeling like you've just practiced a little too hard and you just need to kind of get started. So first thing is just to kind of stretch the lips out. You can use your tongue to kind of push around the lips and just kind of stretch it out as much as you can. This is going to look kind of funny. This is where the video with my students really comes in handy because it's kind of fun to watch them all do this. We lost Larry, but I would love to see his lip exercises. And then another thing that you can do is you can sort of put air pockets into different parts of your mouth, like kind of like Dizzy Gillespie a little bit. It's just helping get some of that blood flow into your face, and just, you know, we want to stretch things out a little bit before we get going. Plus, it's just kind of fun to do. And if anybody asks you why you're making weird faces, just say, well, I play the trumpet. That's just kind of part of my life now. And another one that you can do is just kind of open it up and maybe make like a ah, oh, and then kind of a kissy face, you know. I remember this one when I was in drum corps back in the day, and they would always say ah, oh, and then kiss the fish. Do something like that. And for me, that just helps. And sometimes, you know, I know some folks who are really into kind of like giving a little bit of a facial massage, and you can kind of just, I mean, it's hard when you have facial hair; it feels kind of odd, but just kind of massaging out a little bit, you know, that can help kind of get some of that lactic acid right there. And again, you never want to be rough with it. And then lastly, just, you know, doing some of that horse face sound. Just kind of flapping the lips. You're allowed to do this. You're a trumpet player. Everyone will know you're a trumpet player immediately as soon as you start making that sound. And they'll never mistake you for a singer, because singers, when they do it, they usually make a vocal sound like this. Something like that. And trumpet players, well, if you're doing that, then they'll be like, wait, what? Just... And it'll help if you ever have to play a sleigh ride and you need to make the horse sound at the end. So we've got a few more people watching now. This is great. Looks like everybody, Luca found a way on to watch the YouTube. We'll get you figured out later, Luca. Okay, so breathing exercises. We're just going to jump right into it today. I want to kind of get right to the exercises. I'm going to turn on my metronome, if I can find it. And we're going to start with in for 4, out for 4. And we're going to do that let's do 2 times of in for 4, out for 4. Then we're going to do 2 times of in for 4, out for 8. Then we're going to do 2 times of in for 4, out for 12. And then 2 for in for 4, out for 16. So you're going to have to start to really regulate your the amount of wind that's in your body. But you're always going to want to fill up all the way to the top. Empty all the way out, fill up all the way to the top, never holding it in. All right, we're going to let one more person in. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, and in. Out for 8. In for 4. Out for 8. In for 4. Out for 12. In for 4. Out for 16. In for 4. Let it all out. Okay, great. Oh, cool. Now we've got a few people on here. We got Lucas, and Larry, and Steve. All of my students, one former, one new, and one that's been with me for a little while. And we've got quite a few people who are watching on YouTube now. This is great. And I'm sorry I skipped the 4 and 4. I think I went straight to 4 and 8, but you get the idea. These exercises, when you do them on your own, you can do any combination. But I do tend, the reason why I skipped 4 is because I tend to just go straight from, straight to 8, 12, 16, and maybe farther, because that's what I usually use most of the time. But I think it is important to learn how to get all that wind out of your body in a short period of time, also, because all of those situations are going to come up in music. A lot of times we have to play very long phrases, and sometimes we have to play pretty short phrases followed by a long phrase. So you have to get all that air out of you so you can take a new breath, and then you can, Luca, you're going to have to join in a different way, buddy. Not my new Luca, but my older Luca. So let's do one more of these exercises. This time, what we're going to do is we're going to do 4 and 8 for 2 times. And then we're going to go 2 and 8 for 2 times. And then we're going to go 1 and 8. So we're going to start to decrease the amount of time we have to breathe all that air in. Now, when you're breathing in, you're always filling to the top. So you have a lot of time to fill up to the top. Make sure you take all the time to get there. If you have a shorter amount of time, you need to get there a little quicker. So let's give it a shot. And to help you out, for those of you who are doing this live, you might want to get a little bit of space, maybe like kind of shake out your body, just sort of get loose, because this is, it's like stretching just for our lungs. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. In. let it all out. If you're feeling dizzy at all, you can just kind of hang your head kind of down a little bit, maybe kind of go between your legs a little bit and just get some of that blood back. I know that when I first started doing these exercises, and actually a lot of these exercises for me came from when I was doing an activity called drum corps, which is basically like marching band on steroids. And we would, do these long blocks of warming up, and we would do lots of breathing exercises. And the reason why we did them is because Breathing Gym, if you look on YouTube, you can find clips of the Breathing Gym, these two famous tuba players, one of them who just passed, unfortunately. They created this like craze of like doing breathing exercises, and it became a thing that like especially drum corps took on right away, because you have to be able to breathe better than anybody, because you're running around a marching band field, or well, they won't call it a marching band field, but running around a football field, and you're trying to play music at the same time, and it's totally crazy. So you have to be a really incredible and in a lot of control of your breath. So those exercises, I think it's good to expand both ways. Taking slow breaths, taking quick breaths, breathing out for long periods of time. And also for short periods of time. So vary it up and use a metronome. I always set it to 60. That's kind of my default on my metronome for warming up during the day. Is just everything is 60. I don't know why, it just feels right. If it's the right speed, it's not too slow, not too fast, and it just helps me kind of get started for the day. If there are no questions about that, then we will move on to doing a little bit of mouthpiece buzzing. And again, I like to do this kind of freely, just kind of glissing and bending, down and back up. Let's hear some of our buzzers today, just for fun. Why don't you guys buzz for me a little bit, just so we can hear that? Fantastic. That's great. That's great. I can hear a few of you guys. Thanks for doing that. Okay. Oh, cool. I'm learning things here. I just muted all of you guys, and then I can unmute you. And of course, you have control over it too, but I have sort of the ultimate control, which is kind of nice. So again, bending. Cool, I'm gonna have you guys unmuted for a moment here. Now I'm gonna go bending up, and then you guys will bend up. Cool. I can hear Steve. I can't hear the other guys. I think probably there's something else with the audio settings there, but that's okay. Steve sounds great. Really good buzzing there, and I'm sure you guys sound fantastic too. Let's do it one more time. Let's see if we can reach for the stars a little bit. Nice, great work, guys. So again, with the buzzing, it's not about trying to play high or play low or whatever. It's just about trying to find a really solid buzz wherever you go. So if you're stretching down, don't stretch any farther than you can make a really fantastic buzz. And I've been doing this for a while, so where I first started was more like, that's pretty much where I started, and then I just kind of went a little further all the time, and eventually after 15 years of this, you can kind of bend over backwards as far as the analogy goes. Um, cool. So moving on, let's go to our lead pipe exercise. So we're going to pull out our tuning slide, and if your tuning slide is stuck, you can continue to just buzz on your mouthpiece. Never try to force your tuning slide out of your instrument. I've literally seen a dad rip a trumpet in half because he just thought, well, you know, if I pull harder, I'm gonna get the tuning slide out. Well, that's not really how it works. If it's stuck in there pretty good, the rest of the trumpet's going to give way before the tuning slide does, and I have actually seen it happen. So, you know, take it to a professional. They know how to do it. You don't want to do it yourself. If you can't get it out by just wiggling it, then it's probably not going to happen. Okay, so on to the lead pipe buzzing. Let's put our hand in front and see if we can get some wind to come through the pipe. Should feel just a little breeze. Let's feel a little breeze. And let's try that again. That's great. That's great. It sounds good. Oh, I can't just do that. Okay. So now we want to kind of bend a little bit. And again, it is tougher to bend on the lead pipe than it is on the mouthpiece. It's kind of like adding weights. Just bend as far as you can continue the buzz. Good. Doesn't have to be very far. Maybe stretch a little bit farther this time, see, and you might want to send that wind a little bit more forward as you start to go down. I like to think of that wind being just at like the tip of my lips, you know, like I want that wind to be right at the front of my mouth and moving forward as I go down, because otherwise it just kind of starts to fall apart on you, especially when we go into the low notes. Okay, let's try bending up. Bending up is actually much tougher. And you might get a little pop. That's okay if it pops into the next partial. And sometimes, yeah, I can see that that's making some of you guys laugh because it sounds pretty funny. It almost sounds like, you know, like if you've ever watched The Simpsons, there's like a teenager character whose voice cracks a lot, and it sounds just like that. It just pops. But that's a good feeling when you find that spot where it just wants to go. I loved doing this exercise as a warm up when I was taking lessons with Chris Still, who could be watching, I don't know. He was my teacher when I was in LA, and guy was fantastic. And I used this when I was doing grad school auditions, because a lot of times they'd have you just waiting outside the room for like 30 minutes before you're about to play, and you're like, I warmed up like 30 minutes ago, and now I need to warm up again just so I can play. And so I'd be doing some lead pipe buzzing, and you know, they wouldn't really hear me in the hallway doing that, and it was just enough to keep me feeling like I was blowing wind through the instrument without, like, you know, making sound in someone else's audition. Not that they could really hear. Okay, moving on, guys. And I like to call this just like easy starts. And the whole idea here is that you're just blowing the wind until the sound is created. And it's okay if there's a little bit of wind in the sound. Luke's still getting his tuning slide on. That's okay. This exercise deserves some time. Do a few of them. Challenge yourself to play even softer. You notice it took me a while to make the sound that time. And then maybe experiment with blowing a little faster wind. Maybe you get a better response. Just all on a G. And eventually what this leads into is something that we haven't talked a lot about on this in these warm-up workshops, which is what I call P attacks, or at least that's what the rest of the trumpet world calls them. I heard the principal trumpeter of the LA Philharmonic talking about how if he could go back in time and tell himself to do one thing so that he could improve faster, it would be P attacks. And I think that P attacks are slightly different than a breath attack. With the breath attack, it's really all about like just the wind is blowing through, and it's very airy sounding. But at some point, there's a place where you can actually start with the wind that it actually has almost like you're tonguing it. If that sounded like I was tonguing the note, I wasn't. I was literally going. I was not using my tongue at all. Now, if you asked me to do this even just last year, it would have sounded just like nothing. It would have been pretty bad. And P attacks are one of the toughest things to start off on, but they're worth experimenting with and worth practicing, because what they do is they bring the lips back together to start that note. Because a lot of times, you might hear somebody say, I feel spread today. Like my lips are just or something. And what happens is they start to just kind of, their aperture just starts to open more and more and more until they can't really vibrate. And I think that P attacks, what they do is they kind of bring those lips back together, create some vibrancy, and make you feel good again. They make me feel good. So try a few of these P attacks. It's kind of like a breath attack, except with a at the front. And each time I do it, I'm bringing them back together. Good friend of mine at the Cape Symphony who plays French horn, he is very serious about these attacks, that he will do an exercise that with his metronome. He does every sort of rhythmic mutation that you can possibly do. So starting with like this. And he does those very, very softly, and he tries to see if he can, get them very short and very responsive. And I've tried the exercise out. It's exhausting, but it is worth its weight in gold. So experiment with that just little by little, guys. I don't want anybody to push themselves too hard when it comes to P attacks, because it should be something that feels fairly real, coming from a place of relaxation. But definitely experiment with it and see if you can get a very articulate P. So moving into long tones now. Starting on a G. If you feel comfortable with going up to C, then we'll do the exercise going chromatically up to C. But if you feel more comfortable going down to C, then chromatically down to C, which is actually a few more notes, but I'll give you guys time to finish if you have a few more notes to finish. Okay. So we could do this if you want to play along with me, or you can do it like alternating where I'm resting, you guys are playing. However you want to do it. You're muted, so it won't affect anything too much. And that goes for the people watching YouTube too. 1, 2, 3. else is finishing out doing low ones, continue to do so. You should feel a little bit of a tingle in your corners. If you're feeling it on the lips themselves, then you might be using a little bit too much pressure, and maybe you need to focus on getting a better breath in before you start, or starting to start the notes with the P attack. I think that the 6 notes exercise is the perfect place to practice the P attack or breath attack to start your day. Again, we have not used the tongue too much today, not yet in our warm-up. But when I'm playing the notes, the half notes going through, like I am using a little bit of a legato tongue in there. And what I mean by legato tongue is that I'm using sort of a D syllable rather than a T. I'm not going ta, ta, ta. It's more of a, it's almost like a tha, like the. It's a very soft-edged D. If anybody knows Spanish, a lot of times the D is more of a the. That actually helps kind of access that. And again, I said this yesterday that like folks who speak Spanish or French often have a much easier time with articulation part of trumpet playing. At least from my experience, they're quite good at articulation because I think that the way that they use their language is much more articulate than the way we talk in in America, which is very up and down, I guess. Luca, we're gonna have to get you next time. He's relentless. Okay, so we're gonna move on to doing 5-note scales. Just a short version. We'll just go straight to 5-note scales, and again, you can play from low C. I think I might have maxed out on that one. And we want a smooth road. We want to start all of our, we're going to slur everything. We start every single entrance with just a breath attack or a P attack. And if you're playing up above on the G, play at a comfortable volume. I think a mezzo forte is nice, and you can actually crescendo a little bit as you go up. Try to take those bumps out so it's not wah 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 wah. We want da 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 dee, like you're wheeling something up a hill. That it's just smooth. There's no staircases or bumps or anything like that. And again, I'd rather it be a little bit on the smudgy side for right now. Just so that we're connecting all of the dots. Now, later on, older players, a lot of times they need to take the smudginess out, and so we kind of have to go back the other way. But I think when it comes to my younger students, I'd rather them just be connecting the dots with the wind and not worrying so much about everything being so slotted, physically. And you can do this with other scales. This is a great way to introduce yourself to other keys that you maybe don't know. So for example, maybe you don't practice your F scale very often. Do a 5-note scale of that. Starting on F. Great, yeah, Lucas. I couldn't even hear what Lucas was doing, but I could tell that it was very successful just because it looked nice and easy. The fingers were nice and swift and connected, and you could just tell that it was just felt like it was a good breath in. Next time we'll have to get some of our participants to jump on a little earlier, and then that way we can work out some of the sound issues and then we can make sure you guys can play on the Zoom video. But this is really cool. Thank you guys for doing this and being my guinea pigs. I think we'll probably have more folks joining next time. Because there's quite a few that were like, wait, what's the meeting ID? I don't know. So we're gonna get more people on, and I'm gonna share my email with folks privately who don't know it already, so that they can jump on too. It'd be nice to meet some of these folks who've been joining us every time that maybe I'm not sure if I know them or not. So tonguing on the wind stream. This one's real easy. You know, just starting off real simple, like. Just that nice legato tongue. See if you can blow that wind stream, no breaks. Maybe we try it on an F now. It's going to feel a little different on an F. And maybe on an E. Maybe you start to speed it up a little bit and do eighth notes. Let's go back to F and do some eighth notes. Notice how I'm kind of saying more like a da 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 da. That really helps me get that legato tongue that I need. If I have too hard of a D, like da 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 da, you can hear it. Like it's really hard to do a soft, rounded, edged D. Da, even D is almost too articulate for a legato tongue. Slowly speed it up. Triplets, 16th notes, until you kind of reach a maximum of how it should be smooth always. If you start to separate too much, that means you've maybe gone too fast too soon, and maybe you need to spend a little bit more time with the slower part of it. So keep increasing your speed there. These are just fundamental skills that are necessary for being able to play basically anything that's going to pop up. Getting into harmonics now. We're scooting through this pretty good now. Okay, so with the harmonics, I like the metronome on, and we're just going to go, right? We're going to use our tongue syllables like this. We'll do that again, so. And keep that wind moving forward, especially for the low note. 2, 3. Yeah, let's try it down a half step. 2, 3. And now we go down a whole step. 3. Let's add something new. So now we're going to go, let's do it on the same fingering. 2, 3. And let's go down 1 and 2 now. 2, 3. Let's try that one slow. So we're gonna go so half notes. 2, 3. Okay, same rhythms, same pattern with 2 and 3 now. 2, 3. 1 and 3, 2, 3. Yeah, and with 1 and 3, a lot of my students know this or are just learning this, that we want to have our third valve slide out if you can move it, if it's not frozen. If you can have that out a little bit, that's going to make the intonation feel just right. That's every trumpet is kind of made this way where there's compromises in intonation. And one of those compromises is that whenever we use that third valve, especially in the low range, it's going to tend to be a little sharp. So we have to use our extra plumbing here, our little mini trombone to help us out with that. Let's try it on 1, 2, and 3. This is also going to have the tuning, that little third valve slide out a little bit, and just leave it out for the whole thing. 2, 3. Good, good. That's gonna make those notes, those 1 and 3 low combinations and 1, 2, and 3 low combinations. They're gonna sound a lot better. They're gonna feel a lot better. Just you'll have to remember that it's something that it's one of those weird things we have to train when we're playing scales. So when you guys watch me play scales, you're probably like, why is he moving his slide so much? Even when I play chromatic scales, I have to move that. But eventually it becomes second nature, and you know exactly where it needs to go, and you have to take care to make sure that part of your instrument functions very smoothly. Just like a trombone player needs to make sure that their main tuning slide will move very, very easily, we have to make sure that that moves very easily, because otherwise whenever those notes pop up, it's going to be like we're pulling the trumpet off of our face because it won't move. And maybe some of you guys have had that experience already. I certainly have. So take care of those things. At some point, we probably need to do a workshop on just like how to maintain your instrument, keep it clean, when to oil it, that sort of thing. I've heard some people asking some questions there. Oh, that's a good question. So Lucas asked me a question that I think everybody would benefit from, about whether slide grease for the tuning slide or for the third valve slide, I think he meant for the third valve slide, will make it move better. Well, not really, because slide grease is really for the tuning slide, and it's very thick. And so it's gonna move very sludgily, and that's a good thing for the tuning slide, because we don't want the tuning slide to just come flying off while we're playing. We want that to be in there very solidly. But when it comes to the third valve slide, we actually need something that's not quite as thin as valve oil and not quite as thick as tuning slide grease. It's right smack in the middle, and it's actually very specific to your third and first valve slides. So there's Hetman makes a really great version of that. You can actually look up. It's like, I think they say like maybe it's like slide. I think they call it just. Let me see. I got it in my drawer. Good question. They just call it. It's so goopy. They just call it slide gel. Tuning slide grease. Oh, it's not the right one. Huh. Well, I think that's the right one, but there's definitely versions of it. Okay, so there's a little trick though. That I can tell you guys. So when it comes to the tuning slide grease, you can actually, if you put a very, very light layer of tuning slide grease in a pinch, a very light layer of tuning slide grease on the third valve slide here, and then put valve oil on it, that will help you out at least in the short term. And that's not a bad solution. It's worked for me in a pinch many, many times. So give that a shot. Just make sure you only use a little bit of your tuning slide grease. That's a good question. Thanks, guys. Anytime you have questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. You can put them in the comments, and that's always a good thing. Okay, so we did our harmonics. You can, of course, go farther with the harmonics. You don't have to stick with just those notes. And most days I kind of play the full spectrum of them when I'm warmed up. And I'll even play that kind of hidden partial, the one that we tend to avoid, the that partial that puts us one note below the high C that we want to be on. So I practice that whole range, and I'll even go above the high C when I'm feeling really good. And essentially after high C, it's just a scale: C, D, E, F, double G. And you can do that all open. And you know, if you know anything about natural trumpets, which have no valves, they would kind of start there, and that's how they could play a scale, is just open on a really large trumpet, and then they could go up to these scalular notes that you couldn't play on a regular bugle like this, because it would just be, which is not particularly exciting when it comes to composing music. There's not a lot you can do with that. So that's why when you hear like these old Bach pieces, that they're also very, very, very high, because that was the only way that the trumpets could play diatonically, and even then it was quite difficult for them to do. Not quite a lost art of playing. People have revived it, and there are some incredible natural trumpet players out there, but I am definitely not one of those guys. So look on YouTube, look up natural trumpet. Nicholas Eklund is a really fantastic player. Even Alison Balsam has put out some fantastic natural trumpet videos. But there's a ton of good stuff out there. You just have to search for it. I'm always happy to recommend too. So again, I want to just open it up to some questions. I'm thinking there's probably a few more exercises we can add to this today, but I want to give everybody a chance to ask questions early. So if there's anything you're thinking about, just trumpet related or music related, please feel free to chime in. Likewise, Steve, I can actually hear you. If you want to ask a question, feel free. I can unmute you. Oh, wait. Here we go. Cool.
Okay.
Steve, you have any
Great.
questions
Thanks.
for me? You always
Um,
have good questions.
yeah, no, I think actually today I think I'm pretty good. It's great to see your other students. I remember when about 60 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever it was. But keep at it, guys. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who don't know Steve, Steve played when he was in high school and was a talented player, and then he kind of hung it up for a little bit and just recently came back, and he's playing great. Sounds fantastic. And he's playing in the Brewster Band, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
can't wait until that gets back to doing
yeah,
rehearsals, just
yeah.
like I can't wait for Cape Symphony to get back to rehearsing and performing again. We all miss that, and I think that this is an opportunity for us to connect as a trumpet community and to improve, to really start to take our playing to the next level. So that way, when those performances come back, that we sound like $1 million. And that's what we want. We want to take advantage of this time, because sometimes, when you're in school, there's so many other things going on that we just don't have time to get around to practicing every single day and really focusing on that practice. So this is a really, really unique time, and let's take advantage of that best we can. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute again. So, um, again, I always like to play a little something for my students, just because I think it's important to have the sound of the trumpet in your ear. Um, there are incredible recordings out there in the world that you can listen to on YouTube. You can find everything from Håkon Hardenberger, Sergei Nikarakov, Terry Everson, all these fantastic, incredible trumpet players, and it's just like at your fingertips. So I think it's important that you spend some time, getting on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, whatever, and really listening to good trumpet sounds. I had a student yesterday ask, how do I create a brighter sound? How do I create that brilliant trumpet sound that I want to have? Well, You have to have it very clear in your mind what you want to sound like. And I mean vividly clear. And I remember being told this in grad school that I had a sound concept in my mind that was not quite lining up with what I needed in order to be successful in the orchestra. And I didn't understand. I thought I was listening to professional trumpet players. I thought I was really doing it. But I was listening to players who weren't really playing in the orchestra, which is what I wanted to do. That wasn't what they were doing. They were soloists and they had very unique sounds, but that particular color didn't quite work specifically for the job that I wanted. And so finally, I started listening to these other players and I was like, wow, this sounds so different than what I was hearing in my head. And I've worked, tirelessly for the last decade trying to find a sound concept that I is going to be successful in my job. Um, so I'm just gonna play what I always like to do afterwards. You guys should do this too after your session. Is find some music that you can just kind of flow through. I know Lucas was working on something. "You Raise Me Up" is perfect for this, and just slur through it, and just try to focus on connecting all the dots and getting the sound you like. Don't worry about all the details. You don't want to sweat any of the details right now. Let's see here. Where's a good one? Yeah. So again, it's so important that you don't sweat any of the details. Again, that there was something there that I had a little flub on. Doesn't matter. I'm just warming up. I'm just trying to get some wind through the trumpet. I'm just trying to make some music and just focus on creating the most beautiful sound that I can create. And I can go back and I can work on that thing and I can fix it. I know exactly where it is. I can go back and see what it was that got in the way ahead of time. Maybe I didn't take a good enough breath. Most likely it was that. And also, I don't really know this tune that well. So, when you're doing these exercises, when you start to get into music, just blow the wind, play with the sound you like, miss notes, it's fine. It's fine. But when you're done and you're done with your warm up completely, you come back and you say, okay, I'm gonna figure out what it was. How do I make that better? Maybe my fingers need to be better. Maybe I needed to look ahead. Maybe I needed to sing the line a couple more times. These are all opera tunes, so singing it would be very appropriate. Or maybe I just needed to take a better breath in a better spot. I think that was definitely what I would do next time. So be thinking analytically like that later, not in your warm up. We don't want to force ourselves into too analytical of a space when we pick up the instrument for the first part of the day. We just want to have fun. We just want to get ourselves going, and we just want things to feel really easy and really good. So I can't stress that enough. But then, of course, you should have a session where you start to push yourself and you start to be more analytical about how you're going to fix problems and have goals and all that sort of thing. But have those be separate sessions, because we just don't want that to get in the way. Likewise, there should be at least one part of your day where you again put all of that aside and then you just play. And again, it's you have to have these separations. It's like a light switch. When we're warming up, light switch is off. You're just playing, and then when you're practicing, you're really shedding something. It's on, and then you're performing. It's off again. Just play. Because you can't be thinking about all of these things while you're trying to perform for people. It just doesn't. There's no time for that. And plus, your mind is going to be clouded with all kinds of other thoughts. So for me, I think that it's a good thing for me to play for you guys because it reminds me to just sort of let go and just play. Any other questions, guys? Anybody on YouTube? If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I think we could probably do at least one more little warm-up exercise just to add to our list of things because we haven't really done this particular thing. But in my next practice session, I tend to add some chromatic scales. And I just wanted to give you a sense of what that's like to warm up with the chromatic scale. It's very similar to our 5-note scales, except we're moving in half steps now. And I like to start, again, from G, and just kind of go down. Notice how I started with just a half step, and then I kind of added as I felt good. Then I start to add a little bit more, and it gets more challenging as I start to get farther away from the home note. Give it a shot, just starting with like half step. Just a nice smooth road. And we're doing just that half step there. Should feel very smooth. And when it does, we go down. And then maybe down to E. If you're feeling really good with the fingers and you're feeling like everything sounds very smooth, you might move it a little faster. But as I add more notes, I start to go slower again, usually. So now down to E flat. And down to D. You notice on the D, I'm moving that out. But not on the E flat. And I tend to just stay on the harmonic shelf that I'm on. So if I'm doing it on a G, I just go down to the 1, 2, and 3 combination and back up. I don't cross over just yet. And same with on the low C. It's the same finger pattern. So maybe you start with. That's going to use a lot of wind power to get down to that very low F sharp. That is our lowest note on the trumpet, unless you're able to extend out your slides and play a low F like I can do, but you have to have a very special gadget on your trumpet to be able to do that. Not my best low F, but usually when I'm warmed up, feels a little bit better. So don't forget to add some chromatics into your warm-up session. Again, we're working on a lot of these very basic fundamentals, so that way as we go into practice sessions, we can do a lot more. I think tomorrow I'm planning to kind of change things up a little bit, talk more about, we're going to go through the warm-up process much quicker, probably try to do it in like real time, like as if it were just my regular warm-up, which should take closer to like 20 minutes. And then for the second half, we'll talk about what do you do in your practice session? Like how do you, like what kinds of things should you be practicing aside from just your music? Because there's plenty of things that we need to practice in order to play harder music or to be more successful with the music that we have. And just to improve our mind for music. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And I'm still just I think I'm gonna add some more folks to the Zoom video. Let's jump on a little early, maybe around like 10:20, so that way we can work out some of the audio stuff, and then that way I can have you guys play and be featured on the video a little bit. It'd be kind of cool. All right. If there's no other questions, I think we'll call it for today. And